This presentation about Browns Park, I'm going to be doing on Butch Cassidy and Browns Park. Now, Browns Park is a very remote area. Even today, it's still quite remote. I'm 70 miles away from Vernal or Rock Springs, or it's 30 miles away from Dutch John, but it's out there kind of by itself along the Green River. That's why the outlaws really like Browns Park, because if it's close to three states, so if they're got Utah posse chasing, they can slip into Colorado or Wyoming, or vice versa. Hi, I'm Charlie Wardle. I'm a historian and author about Browns Park. I've written two books about Browns Park, one called Browns Park Haunted History, and the other one titled John Jarvie. Also, I'm park ranger for John Jarvie Historical Site. Now, Butch Cassidy, no, he did not write us a journal or anything like that, keep track of his own stuff. His stuff comes from other people. So, viewing his history, you got to look at what other people said at the time about him. There's a lot of hearsay stuff about Butch Cassidy. Sometimes it's hard to detect what's true or what's not. And also, he did got newspaper reports, and also there's reports coming from, letters and other documents. A little background about Butch Cassidy. His birthplace is Beaver, Utah. He was born April 13th, 1866 as Robert Leroy Parker. There's much mystery about Butch's birthplace, as there is surrounding his death. The Black Hawk War was going on from 1865 to 1872, and it was going on at the time of his birth. There was an Indian attack on the ranches in Beaver the night and the day before Butch Cassidy's birth. He's born at the sound of gunfire happening in the background. Some people say he was born at his grandparents' Gillis home in Beaver, Utah. Another story said he was born in a cabin on North Creek, north of Beaver, Utah. Robert Grandpa Gillis died October 6, 1866, about 5 months after Robert was born. His family says that Butch looked a lot like his grandpa Gillis. He is named after his grandfathers, Robert Parker and Robert Gillis. Now I have a few pictures here of Beaver, and the first one up on top here is a house at 325 South, 200 West, and they actually have a plaque on their door that says birthplace of Butch Cassidy. But this house is built with the same brick that the courthouse was built with, and that didn't come into Beaver till 1870. There's another house here. They say it's the Gillises, where the Gillises lived at 2nd West and 1st South, and he is born there. And then I have another house that they said the Gillises lived on 3rd North and 4th West. And they said he is born at the Gillises. The house on North Creek, though, there is no cabin there, so it's all been torn down. And there's a picture of Robert Gillis, who Butch Cassidy looked like. Happenings in Beaver, Utah during Butch's childhood. Butch family lived in Beaver, Utah till he was 12 years old. Then the family moved to Circleville, Utah. John Lee's trial for the Mountain Mill Massacre took place in Beaver, Utah. Butch and his parents signed a petition to let John go free. Beaver is where Butch received most of his schooling. Max Parker, Robert's father, works in many places during his childhood. Butch also worked for other ranches. Now there's a picture of Butch Cassidy's childhood home. It's on 390 North, 300 East. That house is no longer there. It has been torn down. Then the picture of the Beaver County Courthouse built in 1870. That's where the John Lee trial took place.
Then a picture of a petition that was the Parker family signed. That comes from the book of Cassidy. Circleville, Utah. His family bought a farm outside of Circleville in 1880. Max Parker put money down on more farmland and started working that land in Circleville. Another person also wanted that farmland. The church court ruled in the other man's favor, and the Parker family was upset on the ruling and lost money on the land. Butch worked for other ranches around the area. Jim Marshall, who Butch and his mother worked for, could have told him about Browns Park, because Jim Marshall later came to Browns Park. While working for other ranches, Butch learned how to take care of horses and cattle. He became a good cowboy. Butch also met Mike Cassidy, who taught Butch the skill of wrestling. Now, Butch Cassidy's home in Circleville is now a state museum, and there's a plaque at it and me standing in front of it. Then the poplar trees planted there were planted by Butch and his mother. This comes from an interview with Minnie Krause, who is a resident of Browns Park. The interview was with Bill Tennant, and it was done in 1978. Minnie was 99 years old at the time of the interview. Bill Tennant, what can you tell us about Butch Cassidy? Minnie, I never knew he was an outlaw or that he was a bad man. I thought he was wonderful. One night, when they were riding over here somewhere in Colorado, they robbed the bank. They took my father's best saddle horse from the pasture. We never knew it. My father, never knew it till morning, I guess. Maybe he did, and maybe he didn't, but I don't know. I don't think he did. Butch, came to visit like that, always brought the horse back or something else. There's a picture of Minnie Krause there. More from Minnie Krause interview. One day I remember in Brno, we had been there to school all winter. I had a little gray saddle mare colt, and my brother and I were out there trying to get the colt up on its feet and do something for us. It didn't need any help, but we thought it did. Somebody came up to us, and it was Butch, and he stayed there with the colt and talked it up. Finally, he said, "Is your father in the house?" I said, "Yes," and he walked into the house. Another picture of Minnie Krause. Spec Bill Williams from Minnie Krause Rapson interview. Bill Tender. Bill Spec, was he one of Butch Cassidy's men? Minnie, maybe. He didn't rob banks or anything. He fed their horses, took care of them, and gave them information and mail. So I guess he was one of his men, or some of the men. He never did anything crooked around the ranch or anything. He was just Bill Specht, a big, tall, thorny face. I can remember him well. Speck Williams actually worked for John Jarvie for a while, running the ferry, and that may be one of the places where he gave the outlaws information when they crossed on the ferry. And there's a picture of Bill fishing along the Green River. He actually lived at Devil's Hole for a while in Browns Park.
Cassidy's Point. From an interview of Minnie Krause. Bill, now there's a spot that they call Cassidy's Point, which is supposed to be the place where Butch Cassidy and his man used to hide out. Minnie, yes, that's just up above Krause Canyon. Bill, and they said your mother used to take pies and good things to them? Minnie, she didn't take them, no, my mother didn't do things like that, but they may have fed them. I don't know. I told you before, I never knew that Butch Cassidy's cabin. Never. I was growing up for a long time after I came back. I found out about that, and I never seen it yet. Yes, maybe it's there. They said it's well hidden. Now, Cassie's Point is just actually at the bottom of Cross Canyon. When you come out, there's a road that's actually going north that drives up to Cassie Point, and it just ends right there at Cassie Point, and the cliff and that stuff right there. Now there's this rock called Cassie's Rock that was found somewhere around Cassie Point. The rock is has Montpelier drawn on it. It's supposed to be kind of a map for the Montpelier bank robbery. How true this is, I don't know. Is somebody making and planted there, or did Butch Cassidy actually draw this for the escape of after Montpelier bank robbery?
Horse racing in Browns Park. Butch Cassidy's racetrack is along Beaver Creek in Browns Park. Josie Bassett said that people from all over the would come to the horse races in Browns Park. They would line up on the hillsides on both sides of the racetrack to watch. Now I have a map there. A lot of the historical sites in Browns Park put out by the Uintah County Historical Society. And they got Butch Cassidy's racetrack labeled number 14 along Beaver Creek. And they have a picture there of the racetrack at Beaver Creek. Now I want to share a couple stories there. Now, Charlie Krause raced thoroughbred horses, and he saw that Butch Cassidy knew horses well and was good at working with horses. So he hired Butch Cassidy to be his jockey. Butch Cassidy, being the jockey, riding thoroughbred horses, he won most of the races. But one time after the race, Charlie threw a big party, and Mary Krause, Charlie's wife, knows that Butch Cassidy was not there. So she went out and found him in the bunkhouse. And Butch didn't want to come into the party, but she talked Butch into coming in and at least getting something to eat. Another time there was a Phil Mass who had a really fast thoroughbred horse, and he was going to go against Charlie Krause's horse. And the race was set up. And Butch Cassidy spent a lot of time working with Charlie Krause's horse because Phil's horse was very fast. He fed it pretty much oats for a week, and when they finally got the horse ready, they felt like it could win. And the race was on, and Charlie Krause's horse, right with Butch riding it, was able to beat Phil's horse by a nose. And from that day on, the racetrack there at Beaver Creek was known as Cassidy's Raceway. Telluride, Colorado bank robbery. Butch Cassidy, Matt Warner, Tom McCaffrey, and one other person robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride on June 24th, 1889. They get $10,500. Now, for their escape, they had to set up relay horses about every 10 miles. Now, there's a picture of the Telluride in 1880. San Miguel Bank is on the left. There's a sign that comes out that says bank. Then there, in the middle there's a display at the museum. Then also there's a display along the roadside. And the San Miguel Bank no longer stands, but there's where it was, there's a building there that has this plaque on it, talking about the bank robbery, and that's me and my daughter's dog Coda standing next to the bank there when we went and visited there. Hideout in Browns Park. Now this story comes from Matt Warner's book, The Last of the Bandit Riders. He says that after the Telluride bank robbery, they rode long and hard to Browns Park and hid out in a cabin above Cross Canyon. A posse came to the Krause home looking for the outlaws. It is believed that Charlie Krause sent word of the posse to the outlaws, and they were able to escape before the posse located them. There's a picture of Charlie and Mary Krause, and there's a picture of a corral above Cross Canyon. I think there used to be a cabin there, but it's no longer there. And there's also a picture of the remains of an old cabin. This is on a side canyon in Cross Canyon. The Masquerade Dance. Now this story also comes from Matt Warner's book, The Last of the Bandit Riders. Matt Warner, Elsley, and others robbed a peddler. They took the stolen clothing to John Jarvie and had him distribute the clothing to people in Browns Park. Later, a dress-up masquerade ball was held in which the citizens were wearing their new clothing. Matt Warner said the dance was the funniest sight he ever saw. Cowboys dressed in their cowboy clothing and mixed up new clothing. Now there's a newspaper article about this that talks about the robbery of the pillar in Diamond Mountain area. That's just it's kind of south of Browns Park, and that comes from the Laramie Boomerang, August 1st, 1895. The Bassett Ranch. Butch worked and stayed at the Bassett Ranch. He stayed in the barn or the bunkhouse, and the barn's more of a hayloft. Butch liked Herb Bassett's library and would borrow books from Herb. Butch and Josie had a fling one summer when Butch was staying there. Jack Rose was killed at the Bassett Ranch in 1882. Judge John Bennett, was lynched at the Bassett Ranch in 1889, and the Bassett family does have a graveyard with several of the Bassetts buried there on the hillside at the ranch. Now the top picture, we have a picture of Mary Bassett, and she died and was the first one buried in the graveyard. She had appendicitis and died there, I think, at about 1895 or 85, actually 1885 that she died. And Josie and Herb Bassett at their cabin there. Then a picture of me and my wife overlooking the Bassett. Now the cabin in the background is actually a cabin that Ann Bassett built. The original one was in the trees there, which had been torn down. They built a new cabin. That cabin is still standing. Then we got John Bennett's grave there after he was lynched, and we have the lynching pole that he was hung from, and that is on display at the John Jarvie Ranch now. Then they have a picture of me at the Bassett Family Cemetery. What Josie Bassett said about Butch Cassidy. Josie said she was 15 years old when she first met Butch Cassidy. When Josie met Butch Cassidy, she thought he was the most dashing, handsome man. Josie said, I looked up upon Butch as my knight in shining armor, but Butch was more interested in his horses. One time Butch was hiding in the Bassett hayloft, and he said to Josie, I'm lonely, come keep me company. Josie said that in her interview, well, all I can say is I didn't let him get bored. Josie said that we had a hard time hearing and believing the news about Butch Cassidy that was an outlaw. Josie's dad said that fellow Butch Cassidy is not that kind of man. Now there's a drawing of Butch Cassidy from the Wyoming Press in Evanston, Wyoming on May 11th, 1898. Another drawing of Butch Cassidy from the Rocky Mountain News, March 7th, 1898. Then I have a picture of the corrals and hayloft. This is taken in the probably 1940s or 50s of the corral and hayloft there. John Jarvie's store in Browns Park. John Jarvie ran a store in Browns Park from 1880 to 1909. He also had a ferry that went across the river too. Butch and other outlaws would buy supplies from Jarvie's store and also would sometimes use the ferry. They also liked John Jarvie's library. Butch and other outlaws are believed to have hidden in the Jarvie dugout. There's a story of outlaws hiding in the dugout. The outlaws came to Jarvie's place with a posse chasing them, and they went into the dugout to hide. The dugout has 2 rooms in it. They put up a board between the 2 rooms, So when the posse came in, they only thought their dugout had one room. They went in there and they looked in the one room, but they didn't see the outlaws hiding in the back room. Now, John Jarvie was killed by two robbers at his ranch on July 6, 1909. Now, the top picture is actually a picture of the stone house. It's the original stone house. And it's still there at the Jarvie Ranch. That was built by John Bennett. There's a picture there of the store. That store has been restored, and it's right next to the stone house. Then there's a picture of my son inside the dugout, and there's a picture of me standing at the Jarvie dugout. Now, when I first saw the Jarvie dugout, that was 1974. The front entrance was there, but the dugout was all caved in. The BOM has restored the dugout and dug it out and pretty much built it just as it was.
Okay, Doc Parson's place. Doc Parson was one of the first settlers in Browns Park. He actually had a place there that's at the bottom of Sears Canyon. And this place is very close to Green River. He actually had a ferry that went across the Green River at his place. And he also was the first postmaster in Browns Park, and he also ran a store. But he died in 1881 from natural causes. J.S. Hoy said he was the very first white man to die in Browns Park from natural causes. All the rest were actually shot and killed before that, or stabbed to death. But in January of 1881, John Jarvie writes in his journal that he went over and helped bury Doc Parson. And his grave there is on the Parson Ranch. It's just east of the spring house, about 50 yards east. There's his grave there, and also his granddaughter, Susan Allen, is buried right next to him. Now, the family did live there. The Allen family lived there for a few years, and Allen is actually Doc Parson's daughter and son-in-law. They lived there for a few years, but decided they needed to go to Vernal to educate their children. So after they left, the outlaws used Doc Parson's place as a hideout. Rose Warner, Matt Warner's wife, actually broke her leg at the spring house at Doc Parson. That spring house is actually still there. She died of cancer in that leg. I have a few pictures here. I have a picture of Doc Parson and one of the kind of his looked like a workshop he had, and there's a root cellar, and another picture outside the workshop or another cabin nearby. But Doc Parson's cabin that he lived in did last until the 1960s, and it was accidentally burnt down by deer hunters that were camping there. Diamond Mountain Range, southwest of Browns Park. Now, Butch Cassidy had a cabin corral somewhere on Diamond Mountain, or may have been closer to Browns Park. Butch Cassidy also's name is supposed to be carved by his cabin there on Diamond Mountain. Doc Parson Ranch that the outlaws used is at the bottom of Sears Canyon, and the top of it goes right into Diamond Mountain Range. Now, there's a picture taken there of supposed to be Butch Cassidy's cabin, and it's could be there, but I never found it. Word I've heard is that when they put the pipeline in going up to Diamond Mountain, the cabin was removed. There's corrals there, and there's a map there that Diana Allen Cross put in her book about Browns Park, and it shows in the map where Butch Cassidy's cabin was located and also where his corrals were located. Little Hole was used as an outlaw hideout. Charlie Powers was killed at his cabin in Little Hole by Bill Titworth. Charlie and Bill had an argument over a Russell cow they had stolen together. A fist was between Charlie and Bill. Charlie attacked Bill with his knife over the fence. As Charlie was trying to stab Bill, Bill was able to get his gun out and shoot Charlie dead with his gun. Bill had to leave Brown Park area because Wild Butch members like Blackjack Ketchum was after Bill for killing his friend Charlie.
Now in the movie, Jeremiah Johnson, played by Robert Redford, the opening scene is actually filmed at Little Hole along the river. That movie set had all been taken down. There's nothing left of it. Well, there's a picture of me and my wife at the cabin at Little Hole. Now this cabin is about a half a mile away from the river. There's the fence around the cabin. It's a barbed wire fence. I don't think it's the same one they were fighting over. And there's a picture inside the cabin looking out the windows. Then there's also a grave there, with a grave marker there. Doesn't say anything on it though. There's a story about Charlie's grave was being buried in a very shallow one, and animals dug up the grave, and somebody came along once and saw Charlie's skull there, and they stuck it on a pole, and they got the name Skull Creek from that. Devil's Hole was used as an outlaw hideout. Devil Hole was used as an outlaw. It's a little bit downriver from Little Hole, and Devil's Hole is very isolated. It's almost like in a very little Willow Valley. And to get to it from side by side, there is a road that goes along the cliffside, and it's really quite steep. And sometimes your wheels are almost hanging over the cliff because it's a very narrow road. And the best way to get to it is actually from the river. You have to get off and have to hike up to it, or going with horses. Now, Albert Speck Williams did live at Little Hole for a while. Now today, part of the cabin corrals in the dugout, and there's a two-seater outhouse there. There's a right top picture is actually what's left of the small dugout, the small cabin there, and there's the opening gate post for the corrals. And there's was kind of a dugout there at one time, and then there's the two-seater outhouse is still there.
Jesse Ewing Canyon used as an outlaw hideout. Jesse Ewing came to Browns Park down the Green River with H.M. Hook. And H.M. Hook actually drowned in the Green River. The boat capsized, and H.M. Hook went underwater and never resurfaced. Jesse homesteaded and mined in Ewing Canyon. The canyon is actually named after him. In the winter of 1880, Jesse killed Charlie Robinson with his knife. Ewing left Robinson's body on the frozen Green River. He actually went up to a campsite a little ways away from it, and he told him he'd go down the Green River. There you'll find a pretty corpse. Now there's one report that said he actually went to John Jarvie's place, but John Jarvie was still in Rock Springs in the winter of 1880. Jesse would hire people to work his mine. When it came time to pay them, he would actually chase them away. In 1885, Frank Robinson was working for Jesse when he shot and killed Jesse over Jesse's girlfriend. After Jesse's death, outlaws used that place as a hiding place. Now his place is pretty much at the top of the Ewing Canyon. There's actually two dugouts there that they're both caved in, and there's also a spring up there, just a small little spring that kind of trickles out of a crack in a rock. It looks like to me as I was watching that. The little spring that lasts most of the summertime.
Cassidy Lake and Cassidy Reef in Browns Park. These are a couple more places in Browns Park that were named after Butch Cassidy. Cassidy Lake is right on the Utah-Colorado border, kind of northeast of the Green River. Part of the lake is actually in Utah, and the other part of it is actually in Colorado. It's also really close to Cassidy Raceway, and so I think it got its name from maybe this place where they kept the horses and that stuff, getting ready to race, and with the water from the lake. Cassidy Reef is up Diamond Mountain Range. It's a set of cliffs up there that somebody decided to name it Cassidy Reef. Now there's a picture here. First one's actually the raceway. I don't have a picture of Cassidy Reef, but the other one's
Butch Cassidy's lake. And in the late summertime, it seems to dry up, but in the spring, there's plenty of water in the lake. Annabelle Tolliver story. Miss Annabelle Tolliver had a cougar story. One morning, Annabelle looked out her cabin window and saw a cougar looking through the window. With the cougar outside the cabin, she did not dare let her kids go outside. Later in the day, Butch Cassidy came by and Miss Tolliver told him about the cougar. Butch told her to keep the kids in the cabin and he went hunting for the cougar. Later that day, Butch came back with the cougar he had killed. Now there's a picture of Annabelle Tolliver there, and what's left of Annabelle Tolliver's cabin is just a chimney. Okay. Dave Tolliver story. Dave Tolliver was 8 years old. His dad, Joe Tolliver, gave him an Indian pony. The pony would buck Dave off a lot. Butch was in the park with some horses. When he saw Dave being bucked off and getting right back on again, Butch was impressed with his determination. Butch approached Dave and told him, "Dave, I'm going to South America and I could use a pony like that. Would you be willing to sell him?" Butch continued said that he would give you one of his horses plus $5. The deal was made and Dave had a new horse plus $5. Years later, Dave met Butch Cassidy in a bar in Rock Springs and asked Butch, how did the pony work out? Butch said, "That pony was so mean that I had to kill him." And there's a picture of Dave Tolliver. Miss Colette's story. The Colettes moved to a cabin up Cross Canyon. Now, also I have seen another version of the story or heard another version that said it's at Red Creek Canyon, but the paper I found said Cross Canyon. Sarah Colette had planted a beautiful garden by the cabin. Later that summer, a bunch of outlaws came riding through Cross Canyon, right through the middle of Sarah's garden. Sarah came out of the cabin yelling and swinging her broom at the outlaws. The outlaws continued down the canyon on their horses. Weeks later, one of the guys came back carrying a box and gave it to Sarah. In the box was a brand new china and a note saying, "Sorry, we didn't know that anyone was living here. Enjoy the china for the damage we've done." The note was signed Butch Cassidy. Now, another version of the story, actually I heard that Butch himself delivered that to him, and also I've heard that John Jarvie was the one that delivered to him. And there's a picture of the china and with the note and the Colette family. The outlaw Thanksgiving dinner in Browns Park. Some people said it happened in 1895, but Butch was in prison in 1895. Diana Allen Cross talks about this in her book. She says it happened in 1893 when Butch was waiting trial before going to prison. Ice and Dark was the main cook. Butch and others were the outlaws were the waiters. Actually, Butch met the guests as they came in on their wagons. He helped the ladies out of the wagons and took care of the horses and wagons. Then he came in to be a waiter and said that Butch everything was doing well till it came time to pouring coffee. And Butch came out with a coffee pot in his hand and grabbing the cups over the people and trying to pour the coffee that way like he would in the bunkhouse. His partners quickly grabbed Butch and told him that's not how you pour coffee in a nice setting like this, and had Butch set up a coffee tray this side, and he would get the cups and pour the coffee on the side, then give it back to him. Now, Ann Bassett, Josie Bassett, and Esther Campbell all said that the Thanksgiving dinner did happen. Now, there's a picture from the Denver Post, and they also had an article about it in 1955 when they did the reenactment, and also Ann Bassett wrote down the menu here
of the Thanksgiving dinner. Powder Springs Hideout, located on the border of Wyoming and Colorado, is near Browns Park. It's actually in Baggs, Wyoming. It's a horse to drive, riding a horse about 50 miles away from Browns Park. Powder Springs has 2 springs at it, a good place to keep stolen cattle. There's a rock cabin there that the outlaws used at Powder Springs. There's a picture of me. That's actually the lower Powder Springs. It's a good big pond now. Somebody made a kind of a dam there, made it into a pond, and there's a picture of the outlaws' stone cabin there. Elsie Lay. Elsie Lay was Butch Cassidy's main partner. Elsie and Butch spent time working together on wrenches, rustling, and robbery. He was Butch Cassidy's best friend. Elsie Lay was born November 25th, 1869. Elsie Lay, common law wife Maud Davis, spent the winter of 1897 at Robbers Roost with Elsie and Butch. Maud had a baby girl with Elsie named Marble. The movie Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid should have been called Butch Cassidy and Elsie Lay. Elsie Lay, along with the Ketchum brothers, robbed the Folsom train near New Mexico in 1899. The outlaws were captured. Some were killed. Elsie Lay was wounded. Elsie Lay received a life sentence for the killing of Sheriff Fall. Now, Elsie Lay would have gone with Butch to South America, but he was in prison, and Sundance Kid went with him. In 1906, Elsie Lay was pardoned after saving the warden's life and daughter in a prison ball. Elsie Lay, after that, went straight. He married and had children. There's a picture of Elsie Lay and a picture of Elsie Lay with his wife, Mary Culver, and their children. Then there's a picture of Maud Davis and her daughter, and Elsie's daughter, Marble. Piedmont, Wyoming. Butch, Elsie, and Bob Meeks planned the Montpelier Bank robbery while in Piedmont, Wyoming. Now, Piedmont, Wyoming is north of Browns Park, and it's south of Evanston, Wyoming. Butch did meet his lawyer, Douglas Preston, there in Piedmont. Butch sent him to defend Matt Warner, who was going for trial for a murder. Now, Piedmont today is a ghost town. There's a lot of the old buildings that are still there. Walk around. They also have a display, and the display does talk about Butch Cassidy planning the Montpelier Bank robbery there, and also meeting his lawyer there. And there's a picture of Butch Cassidy's lawyer, Doug Preston. On August 13th, 1896, Butch Cassidy, Elsie Lay, and Bob Meeks robbed the Montpelier Bank to get money to pay for Matt Warner's lawyer. They got $7,000. The bank is still standing today, and it is the smallest museum in Montpelier, Idaho. There's a picture inside the bank. They have a picture across the street. They have a poster of Butch Cassidy, and then I'm standing in front of the bank there in Montpelier. Montpelier Bank robbery. Matt Warner's trial plot. This is a newspaper article from Salt Lake Herald, September 9th, 1896. It talks about the connection between the Montpelier Bank robbery and the Matt Warner's trial, with the lawyers, expensive lawyers that were representing Matt Warner and how they were paid for. The article actually is a page long. It has a picture, a drawing that's supposed to be of Butch Cassidy, also a drawing of Matt Warner, and a drawing of Matt Warner's wife, Rose, and his daughter, Haiti. Escaped the law in Ashley and Vernal area. In late August of 1896, Sheriff Pope of Bernal heard that Butch and Elsie were staying at the Davis place in Ashley. Sheriff Pope had a warrant for their arrest for the Montpelier bank robbery. Sheriff Pope led a posse to the Davis place. As Sheriff Pope entered the Davis place, Matilda Davis fainted. Their son, Albert Davis, ran next door to get Aunt Liddy, but what he was really doing was to warn Elsie. Butch was in Vernal at the Overton Saloon. When the posse rode past the saloon, they noticed Albert Davis sitting in front. The sheriff Pope went into the saloon. Albert went inside and warned Butch. As the sheriff Pope entered the saloon, Butch escaped out of the back door. Years later, when Butch was in Argentina, he wrote Miss Matilda Davis a letter describing his ranch. Now there's a picture of the post office where that letter would have went to that is still standing today. There's a picture of the Davis family, and there's a picture of Elsie Lay's daughter, Matilda, in front of the Ashley home. It was actually a two-story house that is no longer there. It has been torn down at their ranch, and there's also a picture of Matilda Davis. Butch was a Robin Hood outlaw. Butch would help other people out with his money. Hannah Knowles received $500 to pay off her house. There's a story of Hannah. Butch came there, and Hannah was really upset because she needed $500 to pay off the mortgage of her house, and the bank owner was coming that day. Butch gave her the $500 and told her, make sure you get a receipt. The bank person came that day, and he was paid the $500, and he gave his receipt to Hannah. And Hannah, after that, owned the place. The bank owner left, and then it says Butch Cassidy robbed him and got the $500 back. In Hanksville, kids would gather at the store when they saw Butch coming, so they knew he would have candy or something for them. Marble Lyman tells how she and other kids at Fort Duchesne would wait for Butch to hand out candy. Someone once asked Butch, why do you give kids candy? His answer, someday I may need a dinner, and this young girl will be glad to make me a chicken dinner. Charles Rich worked at the store in Vernal, Utah, and years later herded sheep east of Vernal at Diamond Mountain. That's also west of Browns Park. One day some bad man came and wanted to take his horse. Butch Cassidy actually put a stop to that and wouldn't let him take his horse. And tell him we don't steal horses like that from the common people. Butch would do household chores around the house to help exchange for a meal. Also, sometimes he would place money under the place to pay for a meal. Now, here's a picture of the Norris family who received the $500, and Charles and Thurman Rich, who Butch helped keep his horse. And there's a picture of the Fort Duchesne kids in front wanting to get candy. This picture comes from the Vernal, UNA County Heritage Museum. They had this in actually one of their magazines. Butch Cassidy's name carvings. There are several name carvings throughout the West that has Butch Cassidy on them. We just don't know if he did them or somebody else did them. But first one up, upper left hand corner is from the Outlaw Cave in Capitol Reef. And then next one next to that is in Emery County. This one's only has Cassidy just spelled with one S in that one. Then the upper right that one's at the cabin at Capitol Reef. Then one below that is actually at Poison Springs in Robbers Roost. Then there's one in a tree there. I'm not sure where that was taken at. Also, a good friend of mine has a story that her grandpa once carved Butch Cassidy's name in a tree, and that was actually cut down and now in a museum. But they, Grandpa saw it in the museum and said, "Hey, I actually did that." Then there's one in Irish Canyon right next to Browns Park. As Butch C, and it says the year 1891. Then we have this RP, that's actually in Robber's Roost. Then L. Parker, 1898, that's actually south of Rock Springs, where that one's at. There's also supposed to be another one in Browns Park. They said it's actually spelled 1S too, but I have not found that one yet. Butch Cassidy's guns. One rifle was found in Robber's Roost with the letters to Butch. It is at the Hutching Museum in Lehigh. I've asked them about the letters. They don't seem to know anything about the letters. Just that the display says there was letters with this rifle. Brent Ashford claims to have a pistol and holster given to him by Josie Bassett that was Butch Cassidy's. Another picture that was said to be Butch Cassidy's sold in an auction for $175,000. There's a picture of Butch Cassidy's sister Lula holding his gun. That gun on the inside the handle had this number 218. Nobody knows what that means. And below that is a picture of the gun Brent Ashworth have. Then I had the rifle that was found in Robber's Roost. That's on display at the Hutch Museum. Then Sundance rifle is at the Little Snake Museum in Savor, Wyoming. Meeting Lula Parker Benson, Butch Cassidy's sister. In the 1970s, after Lula wrote her book, Butch Cassidy, My Brother, she came to Utah State University campus to talk about her book. My dad, who worked at the USU library, knew I liked cowboys and Butch Cassidy. He took me to her presentation. I was about 10 years old. I remember her talking about how Butch Cassidy did not die in Bolivia and came back to the U.S. Some people questioned her, but her answer was, I saw Butch myself. I know he came back to America. After her presentation, my dad went up to see Lula to buy a book and for her to sign it for him. As she was signing the book, she looked at me and asked me my name. I said, Charlie. She replied, well, Charlie, you look a lot like family. You look a lot like my brothers when they were your age. That made me proud and more interested in Butch Cassidy. There's a picture of Lula and a picture of her at Utah State University and a newspaper article talking about her book and her presentation. A picture of Lula in her house in Circleville, Utah. Bill Benson, Butch Cassidy's great-great-nephew in Browns Park. Bill likes to fish, and he has been down the Green River several times fishing in Browns Park. Bill had me take him to several places in Browns Park, like Bill Pigeon's grave, Iceman's Dark grave, and Matt Rath's cabin. So there's a picture of Bill on the lower left there at the dugout where Butch Cassidy stayed when he came to the Jarvie place, and a picture of me and Bill at Bill Pigeon's grave. Then on the bottom there is Iceman's Dark grave of Bill, and a picture of me and Bill actually at what's left of Matt Rash's cabin. That brings us to the end of this presentation about Butch Cassidy and Browns Park. I hope you liked it. I also have other presentations of Browns Park on YouTube. Also, I've written 2 books, John Jarvie and Browns Park Haunted History. Here's a picture of both those books. Those books can be bought at Amazon, or you can get them from me. My email address is charliewardle34@gmail.com. Thank you for going through this presentation.